morning, everyone. I observe this every year, but I'm always mystified by it initially, that in this deep topic of practicing, living in the presence of God is actually the title of it, that the affirmation is practicality. What a great juxtaposition that is. Swami Kriyananda told us that Yogananda used to say, be practical in your idealism. And one time I remember there was an issue going on in the community where I was residing at Ananda Village in California, which was that our school, in order to be able to function, and at the time we had about 70 Ananda children in the school, it required tuition in order to function. And there was this one man who had a family of 4 children, and he was constantly struggling, trying to hold a job, and things were always a challenge for him, it seemed to be, financially. And so he complained to Swami Kriyananda that the cost of having 4 children's tuitions in the school was just prohibitive for him. And Swami had compassion for his situation, and he put out the thought to the leaders in the community that instead of the parents paying tuition for the children to support the school, that the entire community consider these children the children of the community, and that the needs of the school, financial needs, be spread out among all the residents of the community. And that not only made sense to me, I was inspired by that thought. And so I really championed that. But when it came up in the village council, you know, the deciding body of these kinds of things in the community, there were a lot of people who didn't like this plan, especially many of the people who didn't have children and weren't accustomed to that expense. And everybody lived paycheck to paycheck in those days. We had what I like to call simple salaries, as we still do today. But in any case, it was controversial, and there was a lot of discussion, and they came up with a compromise plan, which was that the community would contribute X amount to the school's needs, and then the other part would still be divided among the parents for the tuition for the children. So it was it was a compromise plan. It was still a good plan and a big help to the families. But I liked that original plan, so I was championing that. And at one point, Swami Kriyananda said to me, we have to be practical in our idealism. And I'll never forget it, because it was an example of that situation. We can hold this ideal high over here, but it's a dream, like it was saying in the reading this morning. It has to be made practical, and in this case, that meant harmonious. There had to be a harmonious solution for everyone in this circumstance. And so being practical in our idealism is a thread that goes through all traditions, Saint Teresa of Avila had as one of the prerequisites to become a nun in her order to have common sense. Common sense was a prerequisite. And I know about half of us wouldn't be in that order if we had to meet that standard, you know. And Swami Kriyananda put it to us this way: with anything, whether it's the teaching or whether it's a solution for a situation, does it work? It's only real to us if we experiment with it, which is what yoga asks us to do. Try it. Does it work? Do you experience what the teaching holds out as our experience when we do it? Or are we dreaming that maybe it'll work? But does it work? You know, I've shared with many of you through the years, there was a friend of ours who has become a very deep meditator. But when he first took a meditation class from Swami Kriyananda in the San Francisco Bay Area in the 60s, when Swami used to teach there, Swami held out to the class, go home and try to establish a practice morning and evening. In other words, twice a day, 20 minutes each. And this man went up to Kriyananda at the end of class and he said, I can't do 20 minutes twice a day. And Kriyananda said, that's okay, do 15 minutes twice a day. And the man thought for a minute and he said, I can't do 15 minutes twice a day. And then Kriyananda said, what can you do? And the man thought for a minute and he said, I can do 5 minutes twice a day. He said, very good, do 5 minutes twice a day. In other words, be practical in your ideal. You want to meditate, do what you can do. I can't tell you how many people through the years who are training for Kriya, where Yogananda recommends an hour and a half per day of meditation. And we say to them, that's the ideal, but you need to do what you can. If you have a 2-year-old child, then that's not going to be practical for you. And if you have a lot of commitments or something happening in your life where that's not possible, do what you can. And I can't tell you how many people say to me they're not meditating because they can't do an hour and a half a day. And I say, no. What can you do? And that's where we start. That's what we do. That's what's practical for us at that time. And then it becomes a little bit like the commercial in my childhood for potato chips. I bet you can't eat just one. You know, we do what we can, and we experience the benefits from it. It works. And because it works, then we want a little more, and we want a little more, and we want a little more. And that's how it works. Yesterday, I got a call from our daughter, Geeta. And Geeta's now a light bearer at Ananda in Portland. And I asked her who was giving the service there today. And she said, I am. And then she said, who's doing the service there? And I said, I am. And she asked me, she said, how many times have you given Sunday service on that particular topic? And I said, well, it's December. I usually give a lot of services in December, so I'm going to say at least 15 to 20 times. I said, but every time I give the service and I do read the reading, something else in the reading jumps out at me. And this time, what it was is, the title is Living in the Presence of God. And I thought, well, that could mean two things. When I look at that on the inside, it means I'm living in the awareness of the presence of God within me. And what came to me was this excerpt from the life of the Curé d'Ars, the priest of Dar in France, a little village back a few centuries ago. He was a saintly soul. And I'm going to read it because it's too perfect to mess up. He said, "At the first moment of the day, I endeavor to unite myself closely to Jesus Christ, who was his guru, and then I perform my tasks with the thought of this union in mind." How perfect is that? That's the inner living in the presence. And we do that. Yogananda encourages us to meditate morning and evening. And in the morning, it helps us to bring the awareness of our divinity, of that presence, of God's presence, into the day. And in the evening, we bring it into the night, into our sleep. So it becomes a 24-hour experience. And then there's living in the presence of God, meaning living in the presence of Yogananda or Christ or one of the great ones. And even though they're not in the body, by living alongside of like-minded souls who are also trying to live in that presence, we have a chance to experience that divinity more purely and more constantly by what we read, by what the music we listen to, by all the ways in which we surround ourselves with that presence, with their teachings, with their inspiration, with the vibration, the music. You know, this time of year especially, we have a lot more beautiful music composed in that higher vibration. It's not about music, it's about the vibration that the music carries. And it uplifts our hearts and souls, whether we're home cleaning house or whether we're at the temple in devotion. We experience that living presence all around us, reflected from what is happening within us. Practicing the presence, Yogananda's foremost woman disciple, Sister Gyanamata, used to say, "Shut out the noise of the world or you'll miss it." And by that, she doesn't mean pushing it away. She just means be aware of all the influences in our lives that keep trying to define us by our actions, by our personalities. We're none of these things. I know my mother, bless her soul, she enjoyed keeping me about age 9, and whenever I was with her, it was, oh, she loves French toast, and, all those outer things that people define us at. It's not that we push it away, but be aware of it. In the early years of Ananda, when it was smaller, when we were at Ananda village, Swami would encourage us to, yes, connect with our families. In the old monastic ways, you were, just put up in a monastery somewhere in the mountains and wouldn't see them for years on end. But to visit them in times that's not the most sacred spiritually, like Christmas Day itself. My parents got used to in Remans, we'd visit them the day after, and they got so used to it, we celebrated Christmas with them on the 26th. It's not to break family traditions, it's to break our own awareness of our spiritual reality. I was going to say intention, but it's really our reality that we need to affirm, because everything, and not just families, everything and everyone around us try to define us by what's going on the outside. And it's none of that. So whatever we need to do, if we're blessed with spiritual parents and they see us in an impersonal way, meaning not by our personality, that's beautiful. But be aware that all these influences have a subtle impression that they leave with us, that we're something other than what we really are, which is omnipresent, the eternal. Yogananda defines self-realization. He says self-realization is the knowing in all parts of body, mind, and soul that we are now in the possession of the kingdom of God. That we don't need to pray for God to come to us. That our reality is God's reality, and all we need to do is improve our knowing. That's all we need to do, is improve the knowing of that. And we have many opportunities to do that. There's a great story about a woman in India whose guru asked her to get up at 4 o'clock every morning to meditate. And every morning at 4 o'clock, she'd hear his sandaled footsteps coming by her door, and she'd wake up and she'd get up to meditate. And then after many, many days of this, she was a little tired and she stopped getting up. And the footsteps disappeared. In other words, we have to extend ourselves to Divine Mother, to God. We have to reach out, and then the Divine can respond. The Divine can only respond to our invitation, to our request. The Divine will not impose their will on us. And then we can experience God if we continue to invite God into our consciousness, into our awareness. He's already there, but we have to become aware of it. And the 8-hour meditation, the all-day Christmas meditation next week is a classic breadcrumb to that invitation. We don't have to necessarily meditate for 8 hours. We can come for part of it to feel the blessings. But I will tell you, the very first year that I did, I was only 19. I just learned to meditate that summer. But by Christmas time, I went to that meditation. And I determined to myself that I was going to sit through it. Mind you, I didn't meditate for 8 hours. I tried to meditate for 8 hours. I meditated as long as I could, and as soon as I found my mind starting to wander, I would read a couple of lines out of metaphysical meditations, or I would use my Kriyamala to count prayers for those I knew were in need of prayers. And then as soon as I could, I would go back to the concentration of meditation. So this is our opportunity to extend. We get to each individually extend an invitation to God and Guru to join them next week on that holy occasion.
I'd like to read from Whispers from Eternity by Paramahansa Yogananda. This one's entitled, The Rocket of My Love. I withdrew the life force from my body. The breath which had kept me tied to the burden of flesh no longer shook my awareness. My rocket of life penetrated through the star in the all-seeing eye in the forehead. The rocket soared outward. Its cone of focus, concentration, and deep feeling exploded to oneness with the countless atoms of space and with the little points of self-awareness in all beings. At last, like an expanding cloud nebula, I embraced the vast spirit beyond the space itself, to enter the heart of thine omnipresent silence.